Thanks, Nicola. Well, there's been lots of really interesting business news this week, especially for shoppers. And joining us now to make sense of all that, Nick Bontis, award-winning professor from DeGroote School of Business. So we've heard, of course, this week, Target is coming into Canada, taking over 220 Zellers locations. I think I'm one of the very few women I've talked to who's actually kind of depressed about Zellers leaving. What about my HBC points?
That's right. The loyalty to HBC is a little bit of a problem. And it's interesting that they said that they were only going to take over the urban Zellers and leave some of the rural or Northern Ontario ones alone. So they're obviously going after some brand new customers. But I think there's going to be confusion for the average shopper because obviously we have the Walmart supercenters and they go after the real deep discounts. And Zellers used to be kind of just slightly above the Walmart because you know what? These Walmart supercenters were just so gigantic now. It was difficult to shop there. Some of them are like the size of a football field. So you would always go to Zellers because it was a little bit smaller, a little bit more convenient. You could find what you wanted. So clearly, Target's interested in coming to the 51st state because they couldn't expand anymore in the USA, and that's what Canada is. And of course, I think that the Canadian marketplace is going to be very welcoming for Target because we do benefit. We benefit two ways. One, more competition for Walmart, which means they're going to have to go even lower than already everyday low prices. And number two, just expansion of product offering and selection. So I think ultimately it's going to be good news for the Canadian customer.
Well, I know that the people who own the retail, the malls, are very excited about this because it'll bring all the cross-border shoppers who go over specifically for Target can now just go to their local strip mall.
Right.
But what about, and people are talking also about it being an American company taking over a Canadian company, but really an American bought HBC just a few years ago in 2007. Wasn't it just for 1.8 billion or 1.1 billion? Like, didn't they just sell these locations for more than what they bought the whole company for a few years ago?
They're almost flipping them very quickly. So the proof in the pudding in terms of whether there's going to be a return on investment has yet to be realized. The other concern I've been hearing is loss of jobs. I don't even know if that's going to actually be realized because technically speaking, many of those people that worked in the Zeller stores could in fact be hired by the Target stores anyway. So.
And they tend to hire more people, I think, and then they'll need workers to renovate these stores and make them bigger. What about Canadian competition though? Like I'm thinking Loblaws and their Joe Fresh line. I mean, that would be more direct competition, right?
Yeah, but the reality is that a lot of those kind of box store collections, I mean, in these types of malls that you see, for example, in the Meadowlands up there on the mountain, you know, you have also the Home Sense and you have the Winners. I mean, it's a collection of those stores that come together in the form of a family. Ultimately, it's good for the consumer because you can go to one place, hopefully only park your car in one place and walk from one store to the next. Of course, you can't do it in the middle of winter because it's too cold, but I think in the end, it'll be a better shopping experience.
Okay, well, that sounds good. And we're also talking about Lululemon today, another Canadian success story. I know the last time we were here, we were talking about the woes of people who didn't buy in at Lululemon because now it went from like $30 to $72, 140% increase since 2009. But now they've almost sold out. They had such a good Christmas.
What an amazing problem to have, don't you think? When you run out of inventory because Christmas and Boxing Day sales were so massive, that's actually a good thing. Obviously, some of their stores are thin with selection, but they're going to improve. They've got a lot of quick turnaround time. I've been leafing through some analyst reports saying that the cycling for inventory control is going to quicken, which is good. In terms of Lululemon moving forward, is it a good investment still, even though there's been a rise in the stock? I believe it is because there's a couple of other Target customers they can go after, and the male market, I think, is huge. A lot of males really like those really warm jackets. And now children's fashion. So I think Lululemon's going to target the males and also the children. And the other thing that I think Lululemon's going to do is they're going to significantly grow in terms of international expansion. So they've done really well in the Canadian marketplace, moving into the U.S., and there's a lot of yoga people who are going to love those black tight pants all over the world.
Yeah, I'm hearing they're talking about Australia and Hong Kong. But what about, I think when they first moved into the U.S., they first opened their U.S. stores, they didn't do so well. No. They had to go back and do some research about what sort of market they really were trying to target.
So you got to be very careful, when you're expanding. We do have actually experience with another company that didn't do so well when they expanded too quickly. And you're going to remember this company, Crocs. Do you remember Crocs? Yeah, Crocs expanded like gangbusters all across Canada and the U.S. Then they entered some international markets a little too quickly, and they had to retreat eventually. So I'm hoping that of course, Lululemon will learn from the Crocs experience and not do the same.
Yeah, because I think they're wanting to expand from 75 to 300 stores just in the U.S. Yeah. So hopefully they make more clothes to fill the shelves in those stores. Sure. But we have a really strong loonie right now. So even though we have Target moving north of the border, some people might still want to go south of the border to shop. We're better than par right now. Yeah. Is that expected to stay?
It is expected to stay. So, you know, above $1 is what we're looking at least for another 6 months is my guess. And, you know, cross-boarding shop was huge, especially during Boxing Day and in between Christmas and January. A lot of cross-border towns in the U.S. from Canadian shoppers. You recall the lineups getting through customs was quite massive. The popular things to purchase, of course, are the ticket items like clothes and shoes. They're still very, very popular in the U.S. You still get great savings. Unfortunately for the Canadian dollar, even though it's above the U.S., we still here locally in Canada don't benefit from some products. Two in particular are books. Still paying way too much for books. If you go to your books chapter store, you'll see that there's a Canadian price and then a U.S. price, and the Canadian price is always more. That always bothers me. And then the other thing, of course, is automobiles. So we've got the car shows now coming through North America, and you still are paying a premium for those automobiles when you're buying them here in Canada. So if you got the guts, and you can do the research, and let's say the dollar goes up to maybe $1.05 or even $1.10 where it was 2 or 3 years ago, it might be better off for you go down to Buffalo and buy an automobile. You make some good savings there.
Oh, that's a very good point. Here's what I don't understand about this whole situation, because we know that exporters have problems, right, when the loonie is higher because they buy in American dollars. But Canadian exports are up. Our trade deficit just dramatically was slashed unexpectedly. How does that all jive?
So here's the academic reason for that. We benefited from organizational learning. What does organizational learning mean? It means that 2 or 3 years ago, when the dollar was also high, recall it reached about $1.05, $1.10, exporters in Canada were forced to increase productivity. They had to learn to do business better because the U.S. customer was not going to buy that expensive Canadian product. And sure enough, over the last 2.5 years, that's exactly what many of the heavy manufacturers in Canada have done. They have learned how to do their operations better, leaner, faster, meaner, and that's why we're doing well on the exports.
So it's not Stephen Harper's corporate tax cuts.
Let's not give too much credit to the government.
We have another Canadian product going on sale maybe sometime in March. We're not quite sure when. The RIM PlayBook.
Yes.
What do you think the prospects are
I'm
for
excited.
this?
I'm excited. Tablets are going crazy. Tablets were the hottest gift this past Christmas. I just came back from vacation. Everybody sitting around the pool was reading their books on e-readers. I'm still reading books the old-fashioned way, but RIM now has the PlayBook. They want to enter the e-reader market. They actually predict to have 1 million of these PlayBooks sold within the first quarter. Initially, it's going to be launched on the Sprint network in the U.S., and then they're going to follow it up here in the Canadian marketplace. So I'm really excited about the launch.
So when you buy your books online, do you pay a Canadian premium on that as well?
A Canadian premium on the e-document versions. That's right. That's right. We got to solve that problem too.
And even in advance, like months in advance of the release of the PlayBook, RIM's already coming out with solutions to problems that they're talking about. The battery, they've just announced the battery is going to be able to last all day long.
Which is great. One of the big problems that we have a lot with the tablets, especially with some of the very powerful BlackBerry devices, where that if they're on and you have multiple apps running all day, it doesn't last that full day. For any smartphone on the market, it has to last at least from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. That's the minimal requirement.
I think that's fair. Now let's talk about, in Hamilton, investors. We're talking about Ivor Wynne Stadium. And now, of course, the latest is that we're going to invest $45 million of the city money, $70 million of provincial and federal money into the stadium. Will that be enough? Do we need local investment? What's going to happen?
Isn't it amazing? We've had this discussion for, 2 years now, and we're back to Ivor Wynne, the sequel. This is where we're at. Well, you know what? Here, at the end of the day, is what happened. Business was not interested. That's what happened. Now, whether it was the city's fault, whether it was the builder's fault, whether it was the Ticats' fault, it doesn't matter. In order to make the funding gap work, business investors had to come in with a difference. They didn't do that. Here we're stuck with Ivor Wynne. At the end of the day, even if we fix Ivor Wynne, the question still remains, will any local or regional businesses in this area still be interested in advertising and promoting within Ivor Wynne, the sequel? Tim Hortons has said they might, Primus has said they might, but these are all companies that have already been with Ivor Wynne for so many years. We're talking about incremental revenue. That's what we're looking for. I'm not convinced we're doing a good sales job still.
Okay, well, that's still to come, and I'm sure we'll hear much more on that. Thank you so much. Nick Bontis from the DeGroote School of Business. You can check out his website, nickbontis.com.